Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live this Monday morning. And we're coming near the end of February. And so Katie and Aideen decided they'd love to talk about from chaos to clarity. So, first of all, welcome, ladies. And Katie, would you like to introduce yourself first? And then we'll let Aideen introduce herself for people who don't know you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. As you say, Monday morning, great time to talk about chaos, I think. So I work in the area of strategy and change and working a lot with lawyers in that area and development, professional development, having had a career firstly in law myself, so grounding it in experience and practice. So that's what I do.
Great, brilliant, well done. And Katie, you've been doing great work. We'll talk about it all later on, but yourself and Aideen together have been doing some collaboration. So Aideen, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I'm a leadership and culture coach, and I work both one-to-one with clients, tackling messy, complex challenges, as well as with teams. And I've been doing this kind of work for about 15 years. Prior to that, I had a corporate, track record working with Accenture, with General Electric. When you come to this work, you bring everything that you have in the background to it, as well as the coaching and leadership type of expertise as well. And as you said, doing some exciting work with Katie and looking forward to this conversation this morning.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies. And if anyone has any questions while the ladies are speaking, please put a comment into the chat. We have 18 people already tuned into this, so welcome everybody. Thanks for dropping in and saying hi. Definitely, please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat and I might show it on the screen. You'd be part of our whole thing today. So, Katie, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And Aideen and I have been talking about this, I think, for a while and noticing, observing patterns in a number of our clients, particularly around the topic of uncertainty. And I think that features in a lot of work, but also in a lot of our lives at the moment, because of the society that we live in, because of the times that we live in, because of what's happening in a lot of places around the world and in our local areas. So we've come to look at how we can support people in these uncertain times. And we were reminded when we were talking about this LinkedIn Live, we're reminded of the phrase that I'm sure lots of people will know, which is a VUCA world. We live in a VUCA world, which is something that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And quite often when we talk about that, we stop there and we say, yes, we live in a VUCA world. And what Aideen and I have been looking at is actually what's beyond that. We can't do anything, or we can't do much about what is happening in the global environment. There's very little that one person or we can do with one client that will have a huge impact on the global challenges. But what can we do that is within our control? How can we turn that VUCA world into something that we feel we have some control over? So there's a concept of turning that VUCA negative approach to our work and our world into a positive one. So we change that volatility into vision. What do we want to achieve with our lives? What do we want to achieve in our in our small area? So what is it that's within our control? And we change that uncertainty to understanding. What can we do? How can we have conversations with people where we get to understand what's going on for them? How can we understand what's going on for us? And then what do we want to do with that? And we turn the complexity into capability. What can we do? What skills do we have? What resources do we have at our disposal? What elements can we move forward with or progress? And we change the ambiguity into ambition. Let's think beyond. Let's think about what it is that might be there for us in a week, in a month, in a year, in 5 years. And let's work towards that. So it's very much allowing us to acknowledge and to recognize that, yes, the world is uncertain, that the times we live in are uncertain. And then to bring it back to us and to say, okay, in that context, what can I do? Where will I go with that? And that's what we'd like to talk about today. Aideen, does that sit with you?
It absolutely does. And About, it was back in 2012, I think it was, I did a program on adaptive leadership in Harvard. And I think the central thing that sticks with me from that, there's lots of things, and we'll talk about some of them this morning, but the central thing is the importance of purpose. Being really clear on what our purpose is in the midst of all of that chaos, volatility, that whole acronym, what is our purpose as we get up every day? And I was thinking about this morning and trying to think of examples, and there's a number of them, but one of the examples that I had was, about 6 months ago, there was a project which was going a little bit messy for me. The context was changing. It was getting really complex. Lots of things that were out of maybe my control, the client's control, and there was nothing that we could do about that. And there's a sense in that you become a little bit unanchored, that you're kind of going, well, what am I going to do about this? When you're leading a project, you want it to be high quality, on time, on budget, but then you see things eking away from you, like, what am I going to do about this? And I remember at the time thinking, okay, so what can I do? And I took a moment to kind of step back, more than a moment actually, and to think, okay, so how do I want to show up here? Obviously, the goal is to produce a high quality product, but I anchored myself in saying, I want to do that. And I want to do that with the utmost professionalism and calmness that I possibly can, and also with some boundaries in place. And that was like a call to action to me, to think about what my boundaries might be in this situation, and to also be conscious of how I actually show up, because, and this leads into, other work that we do, but whatever mood that we show up with, that's infectious. So if the importance of me showing up calm and professional to me in that as well. So anchoring in purpose and on to like a team setting, we often assume that everybody knows what our purpose is as a team. And I don't know about your experience, Katie, but mine has been that we make that assumption at our peril. That if you were to sit down with a team of 10 people and ask everybody to say, what's the team purpose? The reality is you'll get 10 different versions that will be maybe a little bit different, but some could actually be wildly different. And the importance of really getting clarity on individual and team purpose in the midst of the chaos that might be around us. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I think that's the understanding piece as well, isn't it? The antidote to that assumption that we're trying to achieve what our purpose is actually seeking better understanding. And you and I in our coaching work certainly ask questions, and ask very open questions, and probe a little deeper than the surface answer we might get to some of the questions. And the more people in work, people in their own environments, people in their teams can do that, to check for understanding, to ask another question, or open up some curiosity around that, the more that understanding will be shared, and the more you will feel as if you are moving that chaos and moving it into clarity. Because, if we're all pulling together, even if the world outside, and even if there are things we can't change, at least we are clear on how we move forward together as a team. And Aideen, you've spoken a lot about creating that team culture and that learning culture. And I think that comes into this as well, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So there's a piece for me about really creating a culture within a team, within an organization, which is a learning culture where people feel safe to ask questions, express concerns, share ideas, and challenge each other. And that's a really important piece, is the challenge, that people feel like they can actually challenge each other without it being personal. That it's about the work that we're doing together, and that you have that open conversation. And that understanding piece you spoke about, Katie, I think it's important on a one-to-one basis and a team basis. But I think if we step back from it on a system, like with a system perspective, it's really important as well. So if I've got a particular, project I'm working on, or something that's really important to me, I would often work with clients to map out the stakeholders that are involved in that, and understand what does that picture look like from various different stakeholders' perspectives. What's at stake for them? What could they gain or lose by me or my team achieving our purpose? So you start to unpack what's going on in the broader context as well. And I think that's hugely important. And then you can start to figure out, well, what might my next best step be? And in adaptive leadership, we talk, I know you've heard this a lot of times, Katie, we've used this language of balcony and dance floor. that to be effective in leadership, we need to perfect the art of being both on the balcony and the dance floor. So the dance floor is where we're getting stuff done all day, every day. That's what we need to do. It's our job. But we also need to step back, and not just stepping back for strategy days, not just at the end of a week for, to reflect, but actually day to day, taking a moment on a call or in a meeting, pulling your chair back by a couple of inches and going, I'm curious about the dynamic here. I'm curious what's going on. What are we looking at? So it's to have that curiosity and understanding and learning, and really listening to learn in the conversations that we're having, both on a one-to-one basis, but also that system as well.
Yeah. You mentioned something there, Aideen, that has come up for me recently, and it's about what's the next best step. And sometimes, again, depending on your context and depending on the challenges or the elements that you're facing at the moment, even the next best step might be too big, might be too much for you. And one of the ways of breaking down that is, what is the smallest thing that you can do right now that is within your control, not something that you have to go and get another person to team up with you, or not somewhere where you need to go and get lots of information and do lots of research, but what is in your control right now that's really small. And sometimes that is the piece of the jigsaw puzzle that people overlook, because they're looking to solve the larger challenges. They see the chaos that surrounds them, if we're using that language. And it's really difficult to see the smaller pieces of the picture. We're often saying, look at the big picture. Well, actually, sometimes you need to look really small as well. And the next smallest thing I might be able to do is make myself a cup of tea, is go for a walk, is ring a friend, is write something down, is step away from the desk, physically step away from the desk, or move your chair away from the desk, face a different direction. They sound so small and so insignificant, but often what we see is in chaos and in uncertainty and complexity, it's really difficult to see a path. So breaking it right down into that one small step and asking yourself, what is the smallest step I can take right now? I find that useful sometimes in my own work.
I just jump in here and say, this is like stuff for life stuff. This isn't just for work, this is like, there's simple things like in life that you could do, like instead of, the stuff that you're talking about applies to life, I think, not just to work, not just in a work situation, definitely, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think there's no, I often speak about work-life balance to people, and I'm slightly allergic to that phrase, if I'm allowed to say that. What is the balance? The balance for me one day, if my children are sick or if I've got something on, is going to be very different to a balance when they're all fine and there's no exams going on and, everybody's happy. So, it's the integration or the intermingling, I think, of everything we do, whether we call part of it work and some of it life and some of it messy and some of it clear. It's our whole being, isn't it? And it's how we navigate through that, whatever the day presents us with, or the week or the month. And again, focusing in the times we live, focusing so much on the things we can control rather than the things we can't. I think and you mentioned the word, Aideen, and you do a lot of work around this, is grounding us. I think that's really important.
And I think, you touched on this when you were even saying, getting a cup of tea, that kind of thing. There is a piece of this that we need to take care of ourselves. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to show up grounded and centered in what we do. So I think there's that piece, which is important. And then there's being mindful of our impact on others and how we want to show up to others. I think those are two, we mightn't be able to control all the messiness or influence all the messiness around us. But if we can do those two things, I think that's a good starting place. And to then be able to do that step back on our own or with others to look at the situation and see how to intervene.
Yeah. Let's think about teams, Aideen, a little bit more as well, because I think, we've spoken a little there about personal responsibility, personal action. If we look at teams and organizations and just think about the sorts of themes that are coming up at the moment, and obviously very generally, because every organization, every team will have their own unique challenges and elements and parts of themselves. But what I see certainly coming up at the moment is the vision piece. So we've come out of a period of, if we call that the post-COVID era, we've come out of having this sort of totally new world. How are we dealing with hybrid? How are we dealing with teams? All of those lovely sort of questions that we're all still asking ourselves. And we're into that, okay, that is what it is. We are dealing with that day to day, but what do we want to be? What do we want to envision ourselves as? And it strikes me that, looking forward and looking for that ambition. So again, back to the acronym that I certainly like, what is our ambition for the future? And then the questions are, well, how do we achieve that? What else are you seeing in teams, Aideen, at the moment, and particularly in that cultural piece?
So I guess I'm seeing, a bit of fear, and we talked about this earlier. I'm hearing a bit of fear in terms of the global context. I'm hearing a lot of change, and I'm having a lot of conversations with clients about nurturing cultures in their teams and their organizations, which will cultivate learning. So to focus on the learning, so learning from, what's happening in the, in one-to-one interactions, being conscious of conversations we're having and literally listening to people properly to learn, listening to the system, being experimental, so trying to push boundaries, but being experimental and willing to learn from those. So that's the big thing that is coming up. So there's again, I'm not wanting to be specific about it, but if you were to imagine you were working, in tech consulting at the moment, and things are changing on a daily basis, you can't expect that you could be an expert on everything at every point in time. So you have to accept that you don't actually have all the knowledge, and that learning actually is the key to unlocking a lot of things in this kind of space. And so that's a really, really big thing for me right now.
Yeah, and I'm smiling, and you definitely have heard this before, and as have so many people, in a lawyer context or in a law firm context, for anyone that's listening who might be in that space, that sense of you can't know everything, even now gives me a little bit of a, oh gosh, because the tendency to want to know everything, the tendency to want to be the expert, bordering on perfectionism, let's put the word out there, it is a challenge. And I think it's a challenge that we can talk about, actually, because if we look at the leadership in particularly that law firm context or teams of lawyers, you may have all the answers in your technical expertise. So you may be absolutely incredibly versed in your particular area of law, but leadership doesn't have black and white perfect answers in my view. It has, and we've talked about chaos and messiness. It has pivoting, and it has, something happens today that we didn't see yesterday, and therefore we have to challenge ourselves to work out how to deal with that appropriately and effectively or efficiently. The transition, therefore, from having all of the answers and being the expert into leading, I think it can really challenge people, because actually that's much messier.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of conversations I'm having at the moment are around, black and white, and how can we actually inhabit the gray in between and actually figure out what's in between there, because nothing is really black and white. So little is black and white. And it's about trying to figure that out. And Katie, if you don't mind, I'm going to introduce one of our favorite topics. When you talk about ambition and vision, I have to mention Lego, Katie, because some of the work that we do is using Lego in problem solving with clients. And we love asking clients to actually build models of what they imagine the future to be. And it's an amazing process, because people think with their hands, they build individual models and then build a collective model. And the metaphors that come into that, the stories that come into that, just seem to unshackle people from the fear and all those emotions, allow people to actually envision something different in the future, bearing in mind all the chaos that might be around it. So Katie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, we love working with Lego, and I have to confess to being a bit of a skeptic. So for anyone listening thinking, "Ooh, that sounds a bit out there or a bit not for us," or, "Oh, I'm not very playful," or the answer I get all the time, particularly in the space I work, is, "Oh, I'm not very creative. I'm a professional. I don't do creative." And I think what we're learning at the moment, and certainly I've been reading lots of articles and listening to podcasts where the word creativity is coming in a lot more than it used to, into leadership or professional development or cultural, sort of cultural aspects of a working life. And we, as we always say, trust the process. We say that in coaching, when that was 20 years ago, when coaching was a bit out there and sort of, "Oh, I don't know if I want to do coaching." It's another way. Let's be open to exploring different ways of navigating the challenges, because we are in different times. We've got different methods available to us. Lego is one of them. There are lots of others. But that creativity piece, tapping into something that isn't the expertise or isn't a known answer, if it's uncertain, creativity can be an absolute godsend and an antidote to that. So shout out for Lego, definitely.
But I have to admit that I was one of those people. So sorry, I have to admit I was one of those who I was like, "What, really?" But it's a bit fluffy now. But you know what? I can understand what you're saying and how it would make a difference, and the team thing and all of that. So Aideen, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if you could visualize it for those who are listening and maybe you haven't seen this before, if you imagine you're, in a chaotic situation and you want to anchor yourself, your team, in your purpose. So you clarify the purpose, which we spoke about earlier, and then imagine mapping out the system through Lego. So you can actually visually lay it out on the table with these models, and you walk around it and you look at that messiness from different perspectives. It is so powerful because you can really kind of learn from that process of building, but also the different stories that people are telling from the different perspectives. So I think it's a real example of how you can listen to learn from the system through the use of 3D modeling.
And something else we often say, Aideen, is that it, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but it levels the playing field. Because, if you have, and I do this work myself, if I do a strategy session or a change management session or a program that's talking about leadership, you might have, I don't know how many people, 10, 15 people in the room, and you may have chairs and tables and flip charts and post-it notes and all of that. And there's lots of great conversation that happens. But if you are the person or people in the room who feels a little less able to talk or a little less able to find your voice, for whatever reason, we all come from different perspectives and we are who we are, but some people don't find it as easy as others to put their hands up or to say, "I think we should do it this way," or "Can we explore this?" or "Have we experimented with that?" And what Lego does is it puts us all into a creative safe space, because if you put two bricks together and that's all you do, but your story is those two bricks mean, I don't know, the connection between your purpose and the team or whatever it is, that's perfect. That's lovely. That is you. You don't have to give great long explanations or feel yourself too far out of that comfort zone or on that learning edge, because you're talking about bricks, you're talking about a model. And people who've never played with Lego as children or never picked up a brick since they were children are in exactly the same place as everyone else in the room, whether there's a hierarchy, whether there's authority, power balance, all of that. We're all the same people when we pick up bricks and we put them together and tell our stories. So particularly useful if you feel that might be something that is within a team or within a group.
Katie, it just reminds me of a book that I've read recently, not fully read it, but I'm in the process of reading it, called Story Thinking. It's by a professor from a US university. And he talks about how we have prioritized logical thinking in our education systems, in work. And it's all about, thinking in, like a process A, B, C, and we get there. But he talks about this term story thinking, that we can actually evolve our thinking through the telling of stories. And when we're doing coaching sessions, oftentimes people are telling us a story, and as they tell the story, it evolves, it changes, it becomes something else, and they start to learn from what they're even saying out loud. Lego's another way of doing that. I'm sure there's many, many other ways of doing that, but I think it's about appreciating that in messy times, logical thinking isn't necessarily going to solve some of those problems, and we need to look to other ways. And story thinking is possibly another way to be explored, I guess, to look at some of the, out of the box type of scenarios, I guess.
Yeah. And if we think about the reason we came up with the title, from chaos to clarity, leading in uncertain times, what got us to this point isn't necessarily going to get us to where we need to be. So that phrase, what got us here won't get us there, it is how we, it is how we came up with the title for today. It's we may have been doing things really successfully as a team, or we may have been a particularly good, stable team with a great clarity, and then something happens, whether that's the global landscape in which we find ourselves, or a market change, or a team change, or whatever it is. If we continually rely on the things that we've done to get us to this point, without looking up and out and thinking more creatively and more innovatively, then we may not solve the problems or the challenges or the features of our team that we want to progress. And therefore, it's coming back to that vision. What is it that we're looking to achieve? And then what are the tools that we need to get us there? And that is absolutely around understanding the capabilities on the team, the skills on the team, whether there's some upgrading of skills or upskilling that's needed, and then breaking it down into those steps. So if we're in this chaos, clarity comes from asking ourselves those questions about what we want to achieve and then how we're going to get there. And I think, if Lego is one of them, great, and it may be a part of it or it may not, and there are lots of other ways of doing it, but we can get there. I think that's the message, isn't it? Chaos may reign, but we don't have to live in the chaos.
And one thing I want to point out as well is sometimes, one thing I want to point out is sometimes people are watching social media all the time and watching the news, and sometimes that can play a part in your head, and how it's affecting you as well. Would you like to say anything about that, about social media, or maybe watching the news all the time on a loop,
Yeah, and I think that fits into the taking care of yourself piece, and figuring out what's actually not being helpful and what is helpful. Something which some of my clients find really useful is journaling. So when you find that your head is in a bit of a mess, that you're finding yourselves being pulled in different directions, to actually allocate a little bit of time every day just to write your thoughts down on a piece of paper. You might never have to read them again. It's a notebook that you can burn, you can just put in the bin, but it's just to put some thoughts on a piece of paper, a stream of consciousness, and let it all out. And then you find that once you've done that, you actually may have greater clarity. It's something I practice on and off, and I genuinely find that to be really, really helpful when there's a lot going on in my life at a point in time. So yeah, I think that's useful to mention.
And Sam, I'm no expert at all in that sort of, how do we have a healthy connection or a healthy relationship with social media and news consumption and all of that. But it strikes me that a lot of that is habit, and we see that coming up not in relation to social media, but in relation to teams and the way they work themselves and individuals. If it's a habit, then the question to ask yourself is this a really valuable use of my time? Or what is the most valuable use of my time? And sometimes it is, if you're in a sort of a difficult place or a place where you just need some escapism or whatever you need, and actually 10 minutes, half an hour on social media, it does that for you, then that's what's good for you, if that is what you need. But I think asking ourselves the question, if this is a habit, what is the most valuable use of my time here? Is it going out for a walk, making a tea, ringing a friend, whatever? So again, it's balance is a difficult word, I think, to use, but it is about inquiry. It is about understanding, are we doing it because it's a habit, or are we doing it because that's actually what we need at the moment? And that's different for everyone. There's no rule that says an hour on social media is no good for you. Well, it depends what you're doing, and depends how you're valuing that. So so ask yourself the question, is this valuable? Maybe it is.
I know my daughter, for example, I know that she doesn't watch the news.
Okay.
And she does a gratitude thing, at night,
Wow.
so little kind of changes like that. But I think that's really good what you said. Is this the best use of my time right now? That's really good. I like that.
Yeah. And the lovely thing is the answer will be very different for everyone. And therefore, it's yours to own. You no one can tell you shouldn't be doing that. Aideen and I often look for shoulds, don't we? When we're listening in coaching, if someone says, "Oh, I really should be doing this, I should be doing that, and I shouldn't do this, and I shouldn't do that," it's a real it's something that we are trained to listen for, because often it means that someone is taking a norm or what someone else has said and ingesting that and internalizing it, and then feeling as if they're not living up to whatever that should is. So we might reframe that should and say, I notice you're saying I should be doing this. What is it that you would like to do? What is it that you would like to achieve? How would you like to see yourself in a year's time, or whatever the context might be? And so, everyone's answer is different. Everyone's story is unique. And being able to ask yourself those kind of reflective questions is really powerful, because you won't get sucked into the, oh gosh, I really should be doing this, and which can be, uncomfortable.
I think there's a thread there, Katie, throughout our conversation today about stepping back and thinking about ourselves and how we're showing up, what's useful to us in terms of the habits that we might have, our purpose, the purpose of our team, the vision, the reframing that you had of VUCA, being able to step back and think about that. So I think it's shifting from being caught up by VUCA to actually stepping back and looking at all those different elements of it, the VUCA positive, as you described.
Yeah. And Aideen, I'm conscious as you were saying that, I think we could also, it could be useful for us to also say, this isn't easy. It may sound as if we're saying, yeah, just step back, have a reflection, write in your journal, do something, go for a walk. We are not suggesting in any way that this is an easy thing to do, but we are suggesting or inviting you to be curious and to think, is what I'm doing, useful in my time as a team leader or as a team member? Is it useful in my, my context? And if the answer is no, not really, or it could be better, then what can you do about it? And then the suggestions or the invitations for exploration or experimentation that we're offering today are the ones that or others that you might find assist you and support you on that journey, which isn't easy. I think we're all living proof that living in these chaotic times isn't easy. But if you just end the sentence there, it isn't easy, you feel out of control. So what we're suggesting today, or what we're inviting you to consider today, is accept that there is chaos and then bring it back and say, okay, but what is in my control?
Katie, can I suggest an experiment if people would like to do it?
Yeah, lovely.
So I think a lot of times we find ourselves, judging others. There's black and white thinking, people thinking they need to be in one camp or another camp. And I'd love to invite people, if they wish, to swap judgment with curiosity. Because curiosity opens up that space for us to learn about ourselves, learn about others. It's not going to fix, global warming. It's not going to fix poverty. But if we can be more understanding of ourselves and of others, it opens the space for other paths and other ways of proceeding.
Yeah, and sounds like a useful thing for us to do with our time, or a valuable thing for us to do with our time, definitely.
So, ladies, where can people find out more? I know they can connect with you on LinkedIn, but is there anything that you have coming up, for example, or is there a website people can visit, or will they just connect with you on LinkedIn?
Aideen?
Yeah, so for me, happy for people to connect on LinkedIn. I've got a website called resonateleadership.com. And in terms of things coming up, Katie and myself have a couple of sessions with Association for Coaching members, or potentially new members. I believe that if you sign up, you might get free membership for the year, where we're going to invite people to envision their coaching practices. So that's just something we're doing, one in Belfast, one in Dublin, over the next number of weeks. So yeah, but would be delighted if people connected.
Yeah, and likewise, certainly on LinkedIn. And I have just finished my new website, so switching my website to katiedegama.ie. So if people would like to look at that, very happy to link in with people or connect with people there. And I think it's the curiosity of what you want to do, and then who is it that might support you to do that. I mean, there are so many people who can guide you in that journey and support you in that journey. Let's work together. Thanks, Sam.
Well, ladies, that has been a real eye-opener, actually. And they're quite simple things that you actually spoke about, because sometimes I think we overcomplicate it, don't we? Sometimes you just have to keep it simple. So it's lovely to see you. We had 124 people watching, so thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And Katie and Aideen will be doing more of these. And ladies, thank you so much and have a great week.
Thank you.